Okay, I'm going to start with just getting some paint onto the background, as I always do. I want to get a lot of colour as a base when I start. So at this point, I'm just kind of putting down random colours to get the canvas activated. So I'm really wanting to put some different pinks, oranges, all sorts of different colours on here. So I'm just grabbing a mixture. This is what I call activating the canvas. So it's just getting lots of things on there of different varieties. Sometimes I go to quite a similar color. Sometimes I change it up a little bit. I sort of try and keep, at this point, some of the colors away from each other so that they're not clashing. But I'm not really, I am wanting the palette to look nice because I always want to work with colors I like, but I'm not thinking that these may be the colors that will end up being on the painting completely. I could come over them and you might just get a little piece of, say, this color that I'm using now. You might be able to see that in the background, but it may not be visible everywhere. So for me, it's just trying to get some things to get excited about, working with some things that maybe I can get some nice happy accidents in the color. Like, do I like that color next to that? Not sure. So it doesn't really matter whether I do a little bit or a lot. I'm just trying to get a nice spread. And you can know that these colors and these colors are complementary. So they're going to work quite nicely together regardless. And I've got some pots that I already have some paints mixed in, and I'm mixing some also. Just wanting to get little bits, different shapes, different bits that can work off each other. Bits so that I can see, oh, okay, that works quite nicely for me. I like the way that that looks, or not. But I do like the way that some of these colors do look together. So it's a good start for me. I'm going to put a few more colors down on my palettes. I just did another paint and it had a lot of the colors that you'll see, but they've got a bit muddy. So I'm just mixing some a little bit more saturated onto my palette now and changing my brushes up. Always helps. I'm thinking to myself, I've got some different greens there. I want to bring in some brighter colors in betweens. And as you can see, I'm kind of color blocking. I've got little pockets of color going on everywhere. And at this point, they're not really touching each other too much. I'm just wanting to get a nice mix of colors across the canvas. So if you're working with blues, it doesn't matter. You can kind of do this type of thing with blues. I might do my next one more with your kind of blues and jade colors. I just happen to have a bit of this stuff on my palette, and I don't want to waste what I've already got on there. And as you can see, they do kind of blend nicely together. I do have mostly this kind of mid-range going on right now in terms of saturation, which I don't mind. I know that that's where I'm at. I will then do something about that in the next layer. I just kind of keep it just getting some nice mix. I don't mind leaving little pockets of white every now and then. I actually quite like that in the painting, and I'll bring back white at a different stage. I'm now going to add into some of my colors a little bit of Payne's Gray, just so that I can start building up some a bit more contrast into here in little bits. So here I've put the orangey color with the Payne's Gray. I'm actually going to mix some more pink in there to get. So I just went straight over that color on my palette and added in a little bit more of the pink. So you can see I've sort of got some greeny dark, and I've also got some pinky dark. That's just blending in a little bit, so I'll get a little bit more of that dark color there. And come over the top of that, start blending it in a little bit. It does start going, when the paint underneath it's a little bit muddy, it does start going a little bit, it does start blending a bit too much, which is fine because I can just keep on going over the top of it, or I could get something that scrapes it a little bit into each other, which instantly gives it a little bit more texture. When I'm doing color blocking, I quite like blending the areas with this subtle, but it just kind of helps. Or the other thing you can use, I've just got a cloth there. The other thing you can use is your towels. So if I just wanted to blend that with the color above a little bit, bring some of that in, get a cleaner line going on, and then also maybe blending some of those colors elsewhere. That's quite nice too, because now they're all starting to blend a little bit, and yet there's lots and lots of pockets where they don't, but it's starting to get more interesting texture wise. So I'm just going to let this dry a little bit. You won't see any stop in the video, but it'll just give me a chance to not blend too much with all the really nice color palette I've got happening at the moment. So when you've got these moments of first layers, I like drying them before I go into the next one so that I can maintain the colors in those early layers and I know what I've got before I move on. So I really suggest, if you're doing this kind of layered abstract, that you dry off and that you don't try and blend too many layers on top of each other. What I've got here is lots of color. The next thing I'm going to do is I really want to go in and define a little bit of darkness. I really want to bump up the areas where you're going to see the difference between the tonal range of the colors. So how I do that is by coming in with much darker colors. So I'm just going to check what I've got on my palette, see what this kind of color is going to do. It's very dark, but yeah, so that's quite good. I can kind of come in and just beef up some of the spots here so I can really get a little bit more of what I'm going to think about as composition. Where do I want my viewer to look? And it may not stay where it is, because if you've done any of my courses, you'll know that I do something called reverse engineering, where I put areas of dark, they end up being where a lot of my light areas are, but you've got to get them in there somewhere. And it helps being able to see what the painting, what you've got really. So I'm wanting this one to remain a little bit more color blocking than a little bit everywhere. So I'm going to do that a little bit with my darker colors. And once I've this is quite a Payne's gray. I like mixing up my dark colors, the base of my dark colors a little bit too. So this one's got a lot of that kind of bluiness to it. I'm going to put some of that onto my palette and mix it with some of my magenta that I've got on there to make it a little bit more deep plum. So when I come back here now, you'll see that I've got that dark blue, but this is kind of going into more of a pink range. And I like mixing the two so that those dark areas, if you just look from afar, you'll just see dark. But when you come up close, it makes it far more interesting because there's this other color that's going on with it. So you've just got more kind of complexity, I guess, a bit more history, a bit more of interest going on in this close story when you come close into the painting. So I'm just getting some of that stuff happening. I like my color blocking to not be really measured. I want them to kind of overlap. I don't want it to be completely blocky, so I will move my brush around a bit. And then to get them blending a little bit, I also really love a catalyst wedge to just come in and bring in a little bit of different. So as soon as I go from behind that, you're getting a really nice blend of what's going on in the background there without kind of losing that block. So your catalyst wedge is a really fun thing for this type of painting. And look at that beautiful blend there with that color underneath. That's really cool. So I'll do that a little bit around here, and it'll sort of just give, and also just going in different directions with it. There you go, I just dropped it. Going in different directions, using the paint that you've already got on there to create other little areas of scratch. The thing about this kind of color blocking, it really is a lot more complicated than it looks. Because getting the right color combinations, getting the colors in exactly where you want them to be, and having the whole thing look really beautiful takes a bit of toing and froing. So these are just the first areas of where I'm just kind of experimenting with getting the color in different places and knowing how much of that I want over how much of the more solid colors I want. And then you'll notice as I go on with this painting, I'll bring in the lighter colors as well. But this one, I just wanted to really bring in some nice darker colors. I'm missing my green. So I'm just going to now look at pulling in some pops of the green back in some areas. I do love the way that the green and the purpley colors blend together. So while I'm bringing on green, it may not be just green. I'm pulling them over the different colors. I'm going to try and not bring on too much water onto this one so that I can kind of keep going a little bit longer on this layer. But I'm just trying to blend a few of them to see, oh, do I like that kind of feeling? But as you can see, I've gone a lot darker. I'm going to keep going with this dark with different colors because I do want it to make a big difference. So I'm putting some more green onto my palette, a light green, which I'm going to try and mix in to some of the colors that I've already got going. Whenever I'm doing something like, for instance, if I'm putting green onto my palette, I will put a little bit of either other colors that I've already got in the palette on there or the opposite so that it's not too saturated out of the tube. Now I know I said I wasn't going to put too much liquid onto this one, but it does need some. I do want to get some drips going. And also it is feeling a little bit thick. So while I want it to be color blocking, I really do like I like those two colors combined. It's a nice little combination there. I do like the way that all those colors do look. And you can just get a little bit of a spread out of your brush when you're putting a little bit more fluid on, without being too much, without getting too many drips going. So that's quite a nice amount of dark going on. You might notice with how much I'm banging against the back board, how much I press to get the color out of my brushes. I'm not very, I'm pretty heavy-handed in my painting. I really want those marks and strokes of the brush to be seen, so I don't tend to be too light-handed with them. But there, put a lot more darkness into the palette. You can still see a lot of the pops of the lighter colors, but there is a lot more dark elements in there now. And so I'm just going to dry this off and then I'll come back and put my next layers on. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you what I do in terms of reverse engineering. So I've basically got white with a brush that isn't quite dry, and I'm going to bring back some of the lighter areas that I went dark over. The reason I do this is when you do bring them back, you don't bring them back exactly the same, and you can see edges, and that makes it more interesting. Like this is more interesting because I've got those little bits peeking. So I'm going to go over some of my dark areas and bring back some light. At this point, I'm not really thinking too much compositionally. I'm just trying to get some little bits of magic that I can use, that I can think, okay, this is where I want to head. But I really like working with like this, where I'm bringing a lot of interest to the painting by going really, really dark and really, really light. Now that I've done a lot of white, I'm going to bring on a different color, which was my light pink that I started with, because I know that's going to work nicely with that as well. And then you've got not just white, it's also going into that pink range as well in different areas. And that's interesting to me because it's not just one color. Now I've got lots of colors kind of blending, which makes for an interesting story. And, you know, at the moment, that kind of background is kind of cool. I'm liking the colors. I'm liking the kind of color spread. It doesn't really say anything to me yet, but I'll just kind of put a bit more life into some of these. And then I might, when it's dry, I might bring on something else like some pencil and get some lines going on in some of these areas to see what that might do. I also, with a light color, feel like I want to bring on that really nice green I had before. So I'm just going to use the brush that I've got the white in, and bring some of that back in some areas because it really kind of pops. And I'm enjoying that kind of yellowy green that's going on. Now, the good thing about that is they're almost the same, but they're different. So they're combining to make something even more interesting. So I'm loving and I do this a lot where I've got a color like this, and then I bring something that's almost similar, but it's like a continuation or a deepening of a story in a slightly different color. And it goes so nicely with both the yellows, the purples, the oranges. It's just a good combination. And now I've got that color that I had at the beginning popping again. And quietly I wonder, there's my bottle down there, if I just kind of spray some of that, I'll get that yellowy green happening in some of the drips, which is kind of nice as well. I'll just get a little bit more of that greeny thing going on. And again, if you want to start just mixing up the color a little bit, I've just added a little bit more depth to it. So it is that green, but it's just got a little bit of the magenta mixed in with it, and a little bit of a slightly darker green, and it makes it a little bit more like an ugly green, but it's a sort of an ugly green, but I love it. So there, put it a few more areas, smaller, bigger, getting that spray going on. And that kind of gives me another layer to dry and then come back and look at, I think I'll start making some other marks into this painting now.